Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa are not seeking to create a multipolar world order. The BRICS nations are merely aiming to improve their own positions within the existing global system. Over the past 14 years, Brasilia, Moscow, New Delhi, Beijing and Pretoria have not been able to speak with one voice about the most important global economic and financial challenges, and in the coming years, conflicts of interests within the bloc will likely increase. I'm your host Kasim and thanks for joining me for another KJ vid. In this video we will discuss if the well-known BRICS economies are an alternative to the global order. I'd also like to take this opportunity to encourage you to visit our website kjvids.co.uk and sign up to our subscription plan, which will give you unlimited access to our content and the full transcripts of all of our video reports and a lot more analysis. In 2001, Jim O'Neill, the then chief economist of Goldman Sachs, coined the acronym for Brazil, Russia, India and China as the largest emerging markets economies. BRIC was officially formed in June 2006, and in 2010 South Africa asked to join and was invited, thus transforming BRIC into BRICS. O'Neill's original descriptions of the division of labour within the bloc still hold true today. China is the world economy's factory, India its service provider, Brazil its grocery store and Russia its gas station. For South Africa, BRICS is a means to legitimise its role as a gateway to and powerhouse for the African continent. The five nations have greatly increased their combined economic heft since the turn of the century, but only thanks to China and India. Brazil, Russia and South Africa's shares of global output have actually shrunk since 2000. Ever since the creation of this entity, China and India have grown dramatically, leaving the other BRICS partners behind. According to the International Monetary Fund, their share of the global economy has grown from 12% to 27% since 2001. In contrast, Brazil, Russia and South Africa have lost ground, dropping from 7% to 6% during that same time. In spite of that, these five countries account for 20% of world GDP and 40% of the world's population. They also hold 40% of gold and hard currency reserves. Being collectively the largest market, their cumulative GDP has tripled in the last 10 years. According to Sergei Gurev, Professor of Economics and former European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, from 2000 to 2015, Brazil, Russia and India have caught up with the smallest G7 economy, Italy, in terms of nominal GDP, while China has overtaken Japan and become the second largest economy in the world. Together, the BRICS nominal GDP is similar to that of the EU or US and is likely to overtake both in the coming few years. On the other hand, Leonid Bashitsky, Bloomberg opinion columnist, believes that the BRICS nations, as well as other populous and often economically dynamic countries in Africa and Asia, are still, like in 2001, outsiders in the global financial system that is run by the United States and Europe. It is worth mentioning that in October 2019, Standard & Poor Global's rating said that the BRICS may no longer make sense. The diverging long-term economic trajectory of the five countries weakens the analytical value of viewing the BRICS as a coherent economic grouping, Standard & Poor's said in a report. In spite of that, in the past 14 years, the group had some accomplishments. The most notable achievement of the BRICS was the institutionalization of the New Development Bank, which is expected to lend money for infrastructure and other projects to boost growth. However, institutions like the New Development Bank and Contingency Reserve Agreement and the Contingency Reserve Arrangement will unlikely ever replace the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank. Huge disparities in the economic might of BRICS members and their deep differences on various issues have raised questions about the relevance of the group. Unlike other economic associations, BRICS does not seek to set up any common political or security architecture. Leaders of this group of countries hold a summit every year, but they have turned out to be a valuable support group for each other, at least in theory. In reality, some of these nations are major rivals. Officially, Russia and India are allies and they have strategic partnerships. However, apart from the strategic partnership with India, Russia also has a comprehensive partnership and strategic collaboration with China, which is India's major rival. India has long regarded China as a threat, as it feels both countries are contesting for supremacy in regions such as South Asia and Southeast Asia. India also has obstacles in relations with China over their festering territorial disputes, and Beijing's support of Pakistan, which is India's arch enemy. China, contrarily, has failed to support Russia in matters of great geopolitical importance to Moscow, even though the two countries are apparently allies. For instance, Beijing refused to recognize the independence of Abkhazia and South Ossetia after the Russian-Georgian War in 2008, and it also abstained from, instead of voting against, the UN resolution condemning incorporation of Crimea into the Russian Federation. Brazil and South Africa, on the other hand, are leading regional powers no matter how they mismanage their economic affairs. Brazil is the only BRICS member that supports the US regime change policy in Venezuela. Brazilian head of state Jair Bolsonaro is a big fan of the United States President Donald Trump, but so far BRICS leaders managed to carefully avoid confrontation over Venezuela, a key point on which Brazil disagrees with Russia and China. In spite of disagreements, it is highly unlikely that Brazil will leave the BRICS group, as the country is highly dependent on Chinese imports and therefore needs to maintain good relations with Beijing. According to some analysts, Beijing expects the BRICS countries to support China as a new centre of power. It was China during the 9th BRICS Summit in September 2017 that proposed the BRICS Plus Reform Initiative, which means cooperation between regional integration associations such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Eurasian Economic Union, Mercosur, the South African Development Community, and the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. Officially, the primary purpose of BRICS is to broaden the cooperation among members and enhance the support for the multipolar world order. However, BRICS nations are dispersed geographically, their economies are in different stages of development, and there is a fair degree of ideological dissonance between some of these countries. BRICS nations are very different in many aspects, especially in terms of their resources and their values and goals. The only thing that countries like Brazil and South Africa have in common is its membership in BRICS. It is not easy to describe what exactly BRICS is. It is not a military alliance, it does not foster political and economic integration, and due to its geographic disconnection, it cannot be even called a regional free trade organization. Today, the BRICS represents a club for discussing common problems. Some analysts argue that BRICS members will likely realize that the group itself has a limited purpose partnership in which political barriers will always limit the partnership's full economic potential. At this point, each BRICS member nation prefers to pursue its own geopolitical and economic interests and take part in an ever-growing set of regional and international platforms, alliances and clubs. However, in the long term, they might step up economic growth and trade between the BRICS countries by way of intensifying their economic integration and building a fully fledged economic union. In the meantime, BRICS will likely maintain the status of a club of emerging nations that exists to discuss a global agenda formulated by other countries and supranational alliances. That's all for today guys, thanks for watching another KJ vid. We hope you learned something from this video and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please don't forget to visit our website kjvids.co.uk where you can find plenty of more analysis. Thanks for watching again and see you next time.